Welcome to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. I interview leaders, experts and business professionals from around the world who are bringing leadership principles and know-how into the digitally driven 21st century workplace, with focus firmly on the how-to rather than the what. Each episode is in aid of a charity chosen by my guests, and since 2020, we've made donations to over 80 global and local causes. Welcome to this week's Rethink Leadership podcast with my guest, Scott Shute. Scott blends his experience as a Silicon Valley executive with his lifelong practice and passion as a wisdom seeker and teacher. In his most recent roles at LinkedIn, Scott was the head of mindfulness and compassion programs right across the organization. He's been a pioneer in creating workplace mindfulness programs and advancing the discussion around compassion in the work context. His latest venture, Changing Work, seeks to curate the best practices of conscious business and make them more widely available. He's also the author of the award-winning book, The Full Body Yes. We discuss Scott's award-winning pandemic project and dive into some of the insights in The Full Body Yes. We segue into what makes a conscious, compassionate leader and how this engages, mobilizes, and motivates others, with examples from Scott and with tips for getting to more meaningful action in this respect as a conscious leader. This episode is in aid of Scott's charity of choice, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, in California, to which we've made a donation and proudly promote through the Rethink Leadership Network. Scott, thanks very much for joining me. Please introduce yourself, your business, and your award-winning pandemic project and the book that came from it.
Excellent. Well, I'm Scott Shute. I'm glad to be here. Hello, everyone. Hi, Jeremy. Quick version is I've had a career as an executive. I was at LinkedIn. I was the global VP of customer operations. But there's this other part of me. I've had a spiritual practice since I was a kid. I've been a meditation teacher since I was in college. And I finally brought that to work at LinkedIn, first as a volunteer, then as a full-time gig. I was the head of mindfulness and compassion programs at LinkedIn. I ended up writing a book during COVID time called The Full Body Yes, which, hey, it even won an award. It's an easy read. It's fun to read. So check it out. And these days, I started a company called Changing Work. And the idea is we want to make work a better place. We want to make work a more conscious place. Still make money, yes, but make it a more humane and caring place, one that makes the world even better and heals us instead of being a place of trauma.
What a great summary. And that really talks to me with where I focus as well. And I have to say, I mean, what a fulfilling, it sounds like a fulfilling career, not just from a business perspective, but bringing that in to all of those areas that you've worked in. And congratulations on the award for the Full Body Yes. That must have been great to receive that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, one of the things I've really been trying to do, you talked about fulfilling. I have so many hobbies. I have so many things I like to do. So as an example, if you can see here, I've got a guitar, I play music, I do landscape photography, as well as being a meditation teacher and executive. So I'm trying to pull all those things together and bring my full self to work. So, my presentations have my photography. Sometimes I even play a little music at the end of my presentations. So I'm trying to be the full person and model that behavior.
So what's the style of music you like to play the most then?
Oh yeah, like singer-songwriter stuff. I learned to play in college in the late 80s and early 90s. So at the time it was Tracy Chapman and James Taylor and Indigo Girls, and it's that sort of thing, just newer artists. Well, maybe not all the way newer, but Damien Rice and all the goods.
You just reminded me, the Indigo Girls. Brilliant,
yeah,
actually. Yeah. Oh, crikey. God, that takes me back, actually. Wow. Well, I could talk about music all day. I'm from Manchester in the UK, and it's illegal not to talk about Manchester music, particularly. But let me go on to you as a leadership expert, a mindfulness guru as well. Having looked at what you do and really appreciate the efforts that you're making in business, and I'm sure your customers do too. You're focused on creating great conscious leadership around all the practices that we have in business. So could you tell us a little bit more about what that entails, where the focus is, and particularly why it's important now?
Sure. Why it's important now? Well, for one, workers want more out of their lives, right? Over the history of work, over the last hundreds of thousands of years, workers were mostly in a bad position, right? It was landowners or kings who had all the power. But now in the digital age, it's like this. You and I are both at home, which means we're working at home, which means we're sleeping at work, right? So our work-life integration is very high. And so more and more young people want purpose in their life. They want more meaning in their life. They want more meaning in their work. And they're choosing companies that give them that. And companies realize that in this digital age, the employees are by far the biggest resource or the biggest asset that they have. So there's more care around the employee experience. Okay, so then what do we focus on? Well, at LinkedIn, and still, my mission is to change work from the inside out. And I talked about both mindfulness and compassion. And this is a good place to start. I do distinguish the two. So mindfulness, I think about as our own self-development. It's an individual sport. It happens when, well, for me, when I close my eyes and I do my thing inside my head. And so for all of us, it's how do we develop individually? And then compassion is how we treat each other, because we don't work or live in isolation. Now, in a company, this is really interesting. So mindfulness might belong kind of in the wellness space, but compassion, every single thing we do as business can have a compassionate starting point. And so the simplest way to think about that is when we move from me thinking to we thinking. In other words, at a company level, moving away from just thinking about shareholders and money to thinking about all of our stakeholders. How do we improve the we, the biggest we? And that means building extraordinary value for our customers. It means taking care of our employees and giving them an environment where they can do their best work. And it means having a great business model to take care of our shareholders. We can dig into it, but that's the starting point.
Yeah, quite a lot to unpick actually there. And I like the way that you talk about that meaningful or fulfilling environment that employees are looking for, as opposed to that compassion, which can go much broader. And from my experience too, it echoes quite a lot of what I'm hearing in business. And would you agree with this, perhaps, that right now employees seem to have much more power of choice than they used to, even just 10 years ago, pre-pandemic, versus now in terms of what they want and what they need from a job, not necessarily a career for life. And therefore, that is challenging organizations to sort of pivot to that.
That's right. It goes up and down. It's like a growing sine wave, meaning that I would say companies have a little more power than they did 2 or 3 years ago. But if you compare it to 10 years ago, absolutely. Employees have more voice. Companies are taking care of them or thinking about them in a different way. Everything from their mental well-being to their work-life integration, to the policies that we create around things like just a simple one, like time off for a death in the family, as an example. All of those things are becoming more geared towards employees.
Yes, that's right. And even day-to-day work, being compassionate about the sheer amount that many are dealing with, even at senior level. I mean, this is actually where it plays, as you say, much broader than just as an employee. The pressures at the very top, the transformation that organizations are going through, it's challenging everybody right now. And I think when you move from me to we, from shareholders to stakeholders, you start to flatten that out. And actually, you can have that kind of mutual empathy that goes up the line, down the line, and across. Am I interpreting that correctly, Scott, from your point of view?
Yeah, that's right. I think when we really are thinking about all of the stakeholders, we're actually more successful. So Raj Sisodia and the team that wrote first Firms of Endearment almost 20 years ago, and then Conscious Capitalism, found that companies who took care of all of their stakeholders are more profitable than the average. And so this is kind of counterintuitive. But if you really think about it, like Jeremy, if you and I were talking about relationships, and and people at home, if you think about your primary relationship, just think about a person that is in your primary relationship. If you think, I really want to be happy. So in order to be happy, I'm going to insist on me getting everything I want 100% of the time. Now it's pretty obvious if you've been in a relationship, this is not how it works, right? We're most happy when we create a balance between everybody involved. And the exact same thing is true in business. When we create a balance for our employees and our customers and our shareholders, everybody wins.
Yes, well said. And I imagine then for those organizations getting that balance, and I know you've worked with many here. Let me quiz you on this. So, those that do have that balance, what are the benefits for senior leaders, perhaps even those listening into this podcast,
Sure.
for those focusing on creating this balance culturally, but also bringing everybody together and making it very fulfilling for everybody in that organization? And do you have any examples you can help us with?
Yeah, sure. At the highest level, what does it do? It creates employees that are more engaged, right? One of the biggest challenges we have globally is lack of engagement with employees. And we know there's a direct correlation between engagement and performance. We know there's a direct correlation between employee performance and shareholder value, or the amount of money that we make. So ultimately, we get better results. And similarly, if we're thinking about on purpose, thinking about customer value, we're going to get customers that stay with us over the long haul. And those customers that stay with us over the long haul are more likely to stay with us when there's challenge, right? When we have pricing pressure from a competitor, when we have our own internal challenges, those customers will actually stay with us through the long term. Just like in a relationship, when we've built up relationship capital, we're able to weather the hard times together. So many examples. Let me give you just one to kind of give you a flavor. Like what does compassion mean, in operationalize? Because I'm an ops guy. I spent my whole career trying to operationalize things. For 6 years, I sat on the product executive team at LinkedIn. And these are the most senior folks in the product world. And 4, 5, 7 times a week, we would have what's called a product review. And so this is when the more junior product managers would come and present whatever they're doing to the more senior people. If you've seen Shark Tank, or I think it's called Dragon's Den in the UK, it's just like that, except without all the attitude and testosterone. So what would happen is, a young product manager would come in, they say, oh, here's the things we're doing. We think this will result in 16% more engagement, i.e. 16% more clicks or more traffic to the website. And the first question, if they don't answer it themselves, the first question is always, well, how's the member experience? Meaning, how's the customer experience with all this change? And if the answer is, well, did I mention it was 16% more clicks? If it's something like that, the meeting will just stop, and that the product manager gets that sinking feeling. And then it becomes a half-hour discussion about our number one company value, which is members first. And I guarantee you they do not do that again. I guarantee you the first slide the next time is how much value they're going to provide to the customer. And so this is a way of building in this ethos that it's not just a bullet on the wall. It's not just a poster. It's how we do business. And it's how you're going to be measured. It's how we're going to hire. It's how we're going to ship every product. And so that clarity between our values and our operations has to be there.
Yeah, the first thing that strikes me is that you were talking about customer value. You build that value, they stay for the long haul, they understand where you're going. It's exactly the same for the employees. We build that
Exactly.
value with employees as stakeholders, right? Am I right?
Exactly. I'll give you an example. So a number of years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, we had a fire at one of our sites near Santa Barbara, California, in kind of middle California. And we had a site there of 300 or 400 people. And these wildfires were really powerful, and they ended up destroying 3 of the homes of where our folks lived.
Mhm.
And 2 of them were in my team in customer service. They're quite junior, frontline customer service folks. And the rest of the team started a GoFundMe site, essentially a fundraising for them, and raised something like $30 or $40 or $50,000 per person, each of the 3. And 2 of the people were actually able to buy a house or buy a place to live with that money, way ahead of their own kind of personal timeline. They had been renting before. And this is not something the company did. This is something that the culture of the company did, because we have this ethos of taking care of each other. So it was just natural that people would rally, behind these folks. And I guarantee you, those three people were so loyal, remain so loyal to the company. Like no matter what happens, they're like, no, I'm in. I'm a believer. Like these people changed my life. And it's that type of care, whether the big things, like that's quite dramatic, or just the little things. I'll give you another example. So something simple like a policy, like a time off for a death. I know some companies who's like, oh, your mother died. Well, you have 24 to 48 hours to grieve, and then you need to be back in the chair. It's like, and maybe that's not exactly how they're saying it, but that's terrible. Where other companies will have up the policy is you get a certain amount of time, but the real policy is you talk to your manager, and the manager will say, hey, Jeremy, you take the time that you need. Right? The work will be here when you get back. So just why don't you just stay in touch with us? Let us know how things are going. Let us know if we can do anything and come back when you're ready. And the difference between these two approaches is just earth-shattering. It's just mind-blowingly different on what a subtle little change can do.
Yeah, and it strikes me you were talking about the big things like the unfortunate fires near in California, and then some of the smaller things. It strikes me the wording is around empowered compassion, and once it goes beyond the company doing it,
Yeah,
then there is peer loyalty as much as the organizational loyalty. So you've got that horizontal as much as the vertical. So kind of that
that's
is
right.
a big kind of locking mechanism,
That's right.
like you were talking about before, about that long haul and people being in a place where it's meaningful, where they matter, and where they can care for others,
That's
including
right.
customers, right?
Yes. And you asked a really interesting question I'm going to answer in a different way is what's in it for senior leaders?
Mm.
Right? Not only is it better results, it's more purpose for them too.
Mm.
So you imagine leading an organization where you're creating a culture that people are really proud of, that you are really proud that your children or grandchildren or your nieces and nephews would, if they came to work there, would you be proud of that?
Mm. Mm.
Right? That's quite heartwarming. That's quite meaningful for senior leaders. And here's the thing about culture change and about, I'll even take it further and say consciousness. I think companies today have a massive impact on consciousness. In other words, how we think about things in a way that religions and governments have been doing for thousands of years. Now it's companies, whether they're aware of it or not. Because when you enter a big company, a Google, Microsoft, SAP, whatever, you have to fit into the culture, which means so how we're thinking about treating each other, how we're thinking about treating the customer, you have to fit into that culture to be successful, which means they are shaping things, which means companies are shaping consciousness in such a profound way today that we ought to be taking advantage of it and taking notice of it.
You make a very compelling argument for that, and for leaders listening in here, that sense that it is truly about leading as being in service to others as
Yes.
much as to our organization and ourselves, whether that's the external customer or internal customer, because all of these big and small things put together really lock in so much more than just loyalty, of course, but
Yeah.
that belief and that consciousness, as you rightly talk about. So the obvious question for you now, Scott, is, well, what's the risk of totally ignoring that or not doing it at all? And do you have any examples or cautionary tales that are out there where it's led down a very negative path?
Well, the maybe the most extreme that I can see, and this is just all external view, is Elon Musk and Twitter. Right? So Elon Musk bought Twitter because of the way he handled it and because of blah blah blah. Lost. I mean, first people walked and then he fired so many employees, but then so many customers as well. And burned brand loyalty to the point that now people don't want to buy Teslas because of his leadership style in what happened at Twitter. Now, is there room for all of it? Are they going to recover? Who knows? But this is a very public, very, loud example of where this doesn't go well.
It's interesting, though. because there is a flip side to that. There is a real kind of cult of personality behind Elon Musk. Those leaders and those people that I talk to that really admire him really can't hear this what you're talking about, and it
It's
kind of
true.
drives me a little bit to distraction, I have to say, as well, which is you can't see this.
It's true.
So if we've got that mix of leaders who are trying to emulate these almost emasculated leaders, at these are almost old school leaders actually in a
Yeah.
new world,
Yeah.
what's the risk ultimately in the long term for them and their organization?
How about for them? What do you want on your tombstone? Think about it. Do you want he or she provided 5% more CAGR on average? Or do you want he or she was an amazing leader and helped everyone around him? I mean, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. This stuff is not complicated. When we are a good person, when we solve for the whole over the long term, our company will do better, we will do better, we will be happier, our people will be happier, we will lead a more fulfilling life. Look, we're humans, and we're Homo sapiens, right? We're animals. Every single thing we do, our first reaction is an animal instinct. So we already know most information. We know that broccoli is better for us than chocolate cake or a bag of crisps. But when we're hungry, what do we go for? Right? We go for the chocolate cake or the bag of crisps. Why? Because we're thinking about the short term. Why? Because we're an animal that's looking to add fat to our body so we can survive. It works exactly the same way in leadership. What are we thinking about? We're thinking about the short-term project. We're thinking about the quarterly revenue, right? But if we could extend that, if we could think about the long term and solve for the long term, we're going to be happier, healthier, wiser, all of it.
You're so right. And it reminds me of the adage that you're not trying to leave a legacy for others. It's about how you leaving a legacy in others
Like
as
that.
a role model moving forward. And I totally get that. And I very much must come back to the point there and say well done on using the term crisps rather than chips there, Scott. That is very, very British of you. Because you lived here for a while, I'm very impressed.
You know, I'm trying.
So as we draw this to the close, Scott, there's so much richness that has come out of this conversation. So for those tuning in that want to really do something positive about this, what are the 4 or 5 tips that you'd offer those leaders who are willing to do different, to
Sure,
think about all of this?
sure. Here's a few. One is think about your goals, right? Whatever you call them, OKRs, MBOs, quarterly goals, whatever it is. And evaluate your goals. Are they balanced? So as an example, when I was the VP of customer operations, basically head of customer service, I wanted to be able to sit down with any customer in the world and be proud to show them my goals, right? So I had operational goals, I had goals for the customer, and I had goals for employees. And so think about that balance. Does your scorecard, does your balance scorecard really create that? Because if you don't measure it, it doesn't happen. So you start with measurement. Then think about your team. The single biggest factor in high-performing team, over and over, we see the research, your leaders or your listeners probably know, is psychological safety. In other words, can I be myself in front of this team or in front of my manager? Can I fail or have struggle in front of them? I think even harder, can I win in front of them? You think about in a sales environment, if someone's already at 220% of quota and their friend next to them is at 70% of quota, is there going to be helping going both ways? Right? Both ways. So, and here's a little tip in a meeting. When you're starting a discussion, every meeting, as the leader, insist that the most junior person speak first. Why? Well, if you start speaking, everybody will say, "Oh, yeah, that's okay. I'll defer to you." So we want to start from the bottom up. We want to make sure we're giving everybody a voice. And even that simple act shows that you care about the whole team, that you're curious. And for bonus points, during performance review season, we're all used to writing these performance reviews. Ask for one yourself, meaning if you deliver 8 performance reviews, ask for each one of those people to write you one as well. How can you be a better leader? It's quite a vulnerable thing, but there is a power. There's an extraordinary power in this vulnerability because it means you're so comfortable in your own skin that you're willing to take it, that you're willing to listen. And that curiosity will really pull you closer to your team. So those are just a few things. Like I said, these things are super, super easy or uncomplicated, but actually not easy to do, some of them at all.
Yes, I'd agree with you on that, but some great tips to get started or have in mind for sure. And I'm also sure that many will want to continue this conversation, find out more. How do they do that, Scott? And how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, great. You can find me on LinkedIn or at scottshute.com. And also, if you want to join us on this adventure to change work from the inside out, we have a community at changingwork.org. And I have a special coupon code for your listeners. If you use the coupon code podcast24, you get a bonus month of free access, and come and say hi.
And where can they get hold of your book, The Full Body Yes?
Everywhere books are sold, generally. Yes.
Great. Well, it's been such a pleasure to listen to your wise words, Scott. Thank you very much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rethink Leadership podcast with me, Jeremy Blaine. Please like, comment, and support us on your favourite platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch as well as listen to each episode.